My wife pointed out that one of the things she loves about Amazon is you can look back at your purchases, and it's a really great reflection of what's going on in your life at the time based on what you're buying. And it occurred to me that the reverse is also true, that the e-commerce journey that everybody probably in this room has gone on mirrors what you and Amazon have gone through. First, only selling books and now selling everything. And so we've all kind of gone on that journey together. And I looked back at my purchase history, and in 2004, I bought exactly one thing on Amazon. It was a book. By 2006, I had a 500% increase in purchases, 4 books and 1 Gillette razor, and which I used tonight. And
hopefully a new one.
Yeah, the new one.
Yeah.
And then by 2015, a year, we had just gotten married, moved into a home, got dogs. We bought everything for our dogs. We bought a TV, bought a snowblower, bought allergy medicine, peanut butter. I looked these things up, literally everything, 4 days a week ordering. And so the question is, at what point did you realize you'd have the scale of success with Amazon going from books to where you are now as a company?
Well, I have a question for you. In 2004, do you know what book it was you bought?
I do remember. It was Writing Screenplays That Sell. And it did not. I was
going to say, how did that work out? Do you want your money back?
I could return.
I'll take it back
because that did not work out for me. I'm going to keep my day job.
So your question is, did I kind of anticipate what would happen over the last 22 years at Amazon? And the answer is, God, no. So, Amazon started as a very small company. It was me and a few other people. I was driving all the packages to the post office myself in my 1987 Chevy Blazer. When I raised money for Amazon, I had to raise $1 million, which I raised from 22 different investors, $50,000 each. They got 20% of the company for the $1 million. And it was 40 people told me no. So I had to take 60 meetings to get 20 yeses. The first question was always, what's the internet? And I had to walk through that. And this was 1994, early 95. And so did I anticipate, fast forward to today and the current version of it? No. It has been one foot in front of the other. And I think that is true for most businesses, where you kind of proceed adaptively. It's step by step. You figure it out. You have a success, and then you kind of double down on that success, and you figure out what else you can do, what customers want. Everything we've done and all the success we have is at its root primarily due to the fact that we have put customers first.
So those few people are probably kicking themselves now that...
Well, it's very interesting. The 40 people who did not invest, it's kind of a study in human nature. I'm in touch with a few of them still, and some of them take it in great stride and they recognize that they actually have ridiculously happy lives. Others of them actually cannot talk about it. It is actually just too painful. That's human nature, and some people are better at rolling with the punches.
I would be in the do not talk about it camp, probably. But speaking of talking, I have the privilege of being able to talk to a lot of people in Washington about all of our member companies. And Amazon is one where I think people have a very different idea of what Amazon is. Some people see you as an e-commerce company or a retailer. Others see you as an innovative tech company. You have Amazon Web Services, and you have original content, and you have Alexa and so many other things. How should we be thinking about Amazon?
Yeah, I do get that is something that people get confused about sometimes. What is Amazon? We do such a diverse array of things, from producing original content at Amazon Studios to Amazon Web Services, where we sell startups and enterprises computing infrastructure, to the things that most people know about, which is our consumer offering, where we deliver things in little brown boxes. And these things seem so disparate. How is it that we're doing all of them? And the common thread, and really what it is it's an approach. We have a very distinctive approach that we have been honing and refining and thinking about for 22 years. And it's really just a few principles that we use as we go about these activities. At the very top of the list is one I've already mentioned, but you'll probably hear it 10 times throughout tonight because it's so central, and it is customer obsession. It's customer obsession instead of, for example, competitor obsession, or business model obsession, or product obsession, or technology obsession. There are many ways to center a business. And by the way, many of them can work. I know and have friends who lead very competitor-obsessed companies, and those companies can be successful. You know, that's not a bad strategy. You have to be really good at close following. You identify winners when you watch your competitors very carefully. If they latch onto something that's working, you duplicate it as quickly as possible. It's a very good strategy in some ways because you don't have to go down blind alleys. If you're not pioneering, if you're only close following, it has some advantages. But it has some disadvantages too. And I like the customer obsession model. I think it's the right one. I think it's better than product obsession even. I think product obsession is not bad, but I think customer obsession gets you there in a healthier way. So that's one of the principles, one of the approaches that we take in every single thing that we do. The second one is that we are willing, I would say even eager, to invent and pioneer. So that is, I think that goes along, it marries really well with customer obsession. Customers are always dissatisfied. Even when they don't know it, even when they think they're happy, they actually do want a better way, and they just don't know yet what that should be. And that's why I always warn people, customer obsession is not just listening to customers. Customer obsession is also inventing on their behalf, because it's not their job to invent for themselves. And so you need to be an inventor and a pioneer. And the third one that's really central to the way we think about all of our business problems and a bunch of things at Amazon is we're long-term oriented. So I ask everybody to not think in 2 to 3 year time frames, but to think in 5 to 7 year time frames. To not think about, when somebody says to me, congratulates Amazon on a good quarter, which is a very common thing to say. You meet somebody, they're being nice, they looked at your financial results for the quarter, they're like, good quarter. I say thank you. But what I'm thinking to myself is, that quarter, those quarterly results were actually pretty much fully baked about 3 years ago. And so like today, I'm working on, a quarter that is going to happen in 2020, not next quarter. Next quarter, for all practical purposes, is done already, and it's probably been done for a couple of years. And so if you start to think that way, it changes how you spend your time, how you plan, where you put your energy, and your ability to look around corners gets better. So many things improve if you can take a long term. And by the way, it's not natural for humans. So it's a discipline that you have to build. The kind of get rich slowly schemes are not big sellers on infomercials. And so that's something that you have to sort of steel yourself for, discipline, and teach over time. So that's what is Amazon. I would say really it's a collection of principles and it's an approach that we deploy, and it's fun. I dance into work.
Me too. I'm not a good dancer. Clearly, you do not take the success of Amazon lightly, and you're very involved in the company. And one of the great things about the internet, many of your competitors are in this room tonight, and competition's a click away. There are probably people in garages across the country trying to start the next great internet company like you did.
For sure.
And so what does keep you up at night when you think about the continued success of Amazon?
Well, first of all, I'm gifted with sleeping really well. So the particular metaphor doesn't work for me, but I know what you mean, which is what could go wrong and what are you worried about. And for me, the thing I worry about the most is that we would lose our way in one of those things, that we would lose our obsessive focus on customers, or would somehow become short-term oriented, or would start to become overly cautious, kind of failure averse, and therefore unable to invent and pioneer. You cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure. To invent, you need to experiment. And if you know in advance that it's going to work, it is not an experiment. And so that's a very important thing. They are inseparable twins, failure and invention. And so you have to be willing to do that. And it's embarrassing to fail. It's always embarrassing to fail. But you have to say, no, that's not how this works. If I said to you, you have a 10% chance with a particular decision, a 10% chance of a 100x return, you should take that bet every time. But you're still going to be wrong 9 out of 10 times. And it's going to feel bad 9 out of 10 times. And with technology, the outcomes, the results can be very long-tailed. The payoff can be very asymmetric, which is why you should do so much experimentation. Everybody knows that if you swing for the fences, you hit more home runs, but you also strike out more. But with the baseball, that analogy doesn't go far enough, because with baseball, no matter how well you connect with the ball, you can only get 4 runs. The success is capped at 4 runs. But in business, every once in a while, you step up to the plate and you hit the ball so hard, you get 1,000 runs. And so when you have that kind of asymmetric payoff, and one at bat can get you 1,000 runs, it encourages you to experiment more. It's the right business decision to experiment more. It's also better for your customers. Customers like the successful experiments. By the way, this is a giant misconception in a lot of young entrepreneurs, inexperienced entrepreneurs that they meet. One of the things that is very fashionable right now is to talk about how disruptive their business plan is going to be. But invention is not disruptive. Only customer adoption is disruptive. At Amazon, we've invented a lot of things that customers did not care about at all. And believe me, they were not disruptive to anyone. So it's only when customers like the new way that anything becomes disruptive.
Amazon has changed so much in 10 years. 10 years ago, you were barely in cloud computing.
Yeah.
Certainly not
We just started in cloud
just
computing
started
10
it.
years ago.
Certainly not doing
Another overnight success. I've noticed all overnight successes take about 10 years.
That's the right amount of time, probably. So we're 5 years away as a...
Yeah, you start something and just start the clock.
Any year now. So Amazon's changed so much over that period of time. Can you preview or predict maybe what Amazon's going to look like 10 years from now?
Well, that's a very good question. I think on the outside, the observable Amazon could change quite a bit. Just as you said, 10 years ago, you wouldn't think that AWS would be such a significant contributor to the business. And there could be more things like that in a kind of 10-year time frame that we don't know about. The one thing I hope will not change, of course, is that approach that I outlined at the beginning. The customer obsession, the willingness to invent, the patience, letting things develop, accepting failure as a path to getting success. By the way, one thing I should point out about failure, and this is a fine point, internally we take it, we know it, and we don't need to talk about it much, but there's a different kind of failure which is not what you want. That's where you have operating history, and you do know what you're doing, and you just screw it up. So that's not a good failure. That's not an experiment. That's just bad operational excellence. And so like if we've opened 130 fulfillment centers, we're on generation 8 of our fulfillment center technology. If we open a new fulfillment center and just woof it, we have to do some internal examination. That's not an experiment. That's just bad execution. So there's different kinds of failure, and you need to make sure you're making the right kind of failure. The right kind of failure should be an invention. It should be something that, it's an experiment. You don't know if it's going to work, and you know up front that you don't know if it's going to work. That shouldn't be opening a new fulfillment center for us. I'm not sure I answered your question. I got distracted by failure.
That's okay.
I've lived so comfortably with failure for so long that I revert there on a dime.
It's an important distinction, though, between the two.
It is. Yeah.
So,
but the things that will stay the same over 10 years, hopefully the approach will stay the same. And then the other thing I would advise any entrepreneur or large business or large organization, like a government organization, is you need to identify your big ideas. And there should only be 2 or 3 of them. And then if a senior leader, the main job of a senior leader is to identify 2 or 3 important ideas and then to enforce great execution against those big ideas. And the good news is that the big ideas are usually incredibly easy to identify. You shouldn't need to think about them very much. You already know what they are. Let me give you an example. For Amazon, the consumer business, the three big ideas are low prices, fast delivery, and vast selection. You don't need, it's not the kind, the way you know that they're the big ideas is because they're so obvious. The big ideas should be obvious. And by the way, it's very hard to maintain a firm grasp of the obvious at all times. So little things can distract you from the obvious. But you have to back up and say, these are the three big ideas. How do we always deliver things a little faster? How do we always reduce our cost structure so that we can have prices that are a little lower? And the good thing about these big ideas is they will be stable in time. So I know for a fact that 10 years from now, customers are still going to like low prices. No matter what happens with technology and everything else, no matter what happens, people are going to like faster delivery. It is impossible for me to imagine a scenario where 10 years from now, a customer comes to me and says, Jeff, I love Amazon. I just wish you delivered a little more slowly. This is so inconceivable that you can have great conviction as a leader to continue to put energy into driving speed of delivery. And whatever in AWS, I know that customers, they like low prices, they like availability, they don't want the services to be down, they like data security. It's not very hard to figure out what the big ideas are, and then you can keep putting energy into those things, and you spin up those flywheels, and they'll still be paying you dividends 10 years from now. And what I'm saying, I'm putting it in kind of a business context, but for those of you who are in government, these principles would apply identically to a government organization. You should figure out what the big ideas are and just spin up flywheels. Get those things rolling. Make sure that you've picked things that will still be true 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
So your rocket company, Blue Origin, is really taking off, doing well. How do you see that company evolving in the future of space? Anything you want to share on Blue Origin?
So, okay, first of all, I love space. I have been a space lover since I was a 5-year-old boy. And I feel like I won the lottery with Amazon. I know I won the lottery. And now I'm investing those lottery winnings in Blue Origin, which is the space company. We are flying a suborbital tourism vehicle, and we'll start taking people up hopefully in 2018. That's coming right up. Working on it for more than 10 years. Hopefully, this overnight success is taking longer than 10 years. I don't know. We'll see. And we're also building an orbital vehicle called New Glenn. New Shepard is named after Alan Shepard, the first American in space. He went on a suborbital journey. New Glenn is named after the American hero John Glenn, who was the first American to orbit the Earth. And so these are reusable boosters, fully reusable. That's the key to lowering the cost. Our vision at Blue Origin is that we want millions of people living and working in space. And my personal hope is that I live long enough to see the kind of dynamism in space. I want to see a whole economy, entrepreneurs in space that I got to witness over the last 20 years on the internet. The problem with being an entrepreneur in the space arena is that the price of admission is so darn high. So to do interesting things in space, the beginning, kind of the beginning entry level is a few $100 million. So you're not going to get, 2 kids in their dorm room doing something amazing in space. Whereas that's literally what happened at Facebook, right? So on the internet, because the price of admission is so low, you can get these amazing experiments where like one kid in a dorm room does something and it turns into Facebook. Or Amazon's case, I started this thing with an incredibly small amount of capital, and it was able to grow because we didn't need a lot to begin with. The heavy lifting was in place for Amazon, right? So I didn't need to build a transportation network. It existed already. It was UPS and the Royal Mail and the US Postal Service and Deutsche Post and so on and so on. I didn't have to build a telecommunications backbone to connect with my customers. It was there. It was called the internet. And in fact, the internet was resting on top of the long-distance phone network at that time. You guys remember the dial-up modem? Some of you do. Some of you are too young to. Some of you should go to a museum and see a dial-up modem.
What was that sound?
Yeah. And so I recently showed a group of youngsters a payphone. I came across one, and I was like, my God, guys, come over here. This may be the last one. You have to see it. So, you know, the point is that Amazon got to rest on top of, we didn't have to build a payment system. It already existed. It was called the credit card. Computers were already on every desk, thanks to, you know, Microsoft, IBM, and Apple. And you know, but what were they being used for? To play games, not to buy things on Amazon. And so all that heavy lifting was in place. And I want to, you know, my greatest, I would have such a good feeling if I could be an 80-year-old guy and laying there thinking about my life, if I could say, look, there is now a bunch of entrepreneurs in space because I took my Amazon lottery winnings and built the heavy lifting infrastructure that does take billions of dollars in CapEx to lower the cost of access to space. That's how you get millions of people living and working. And by the way, we need that. For those of you who like to think about the future at all, you can do a simple calculation. You know, we can argue about, you know, what limited resources on Earth and so on and so on. But here's the calculation that you cannot argue with, which is you take current baseline energy usage on Earth, compound it at just a few % a year for just a few hundred years, and you have to cover the entire surface of the Earth in solar cells. So we're going to have to decide, do we want a society of pioneering, invention, expansion, growth, or do we want a society of stasis? And personally, I believe, because the Earth is finite, and if you want a society of stasis, I think it's going to, first of all, I don't personally believe that stasis is even compatible with freedom, so I think for me that's a big problem. Second of all, it's going to be dull. Stasis is going to be very dull. You don't want to live in the stasis world. And so, of course, we're going to continue to get more efficient, too. We have been. For hundreds of years, we've been getting more productive, more efficient. That trend is going to continue. But even so, we're going to want to use more energy per capita. And also, I don't want a stabilized population. I would love for there to be 1 trillion humans in the solar system. With 1 trillion humans, we would have 1,000 Einsteins and 1,000 Mozarts. It'd be an incredible civilization. Don't you want that dynamism? It'd be so much more interesting. This is for your great-great-great-grandchildren, but what kind of world do you want them to live in? I want them to live in that expansive world that is, you know, learning more about the universe and moving out throughout the solar system. So that we have to do it. And anyway, so it's fun to work on that. And you know, I won so many lotteries in my life. I have the best parents in the world. My mom, Jackie, and my dad, Mike. My mom had me when she was 17 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was still in high school. It was not cool. And she did an amazing job. My dad, Mike, is a Cuban immigrant who came here when he was 16 without his parents. Did an amazing job. So those are the things that are your little gifts in life. Sometimes you get, my greatest admiration, by the way, is withheld for those people, and I know several of them, who had terrible parents and still somehow made it through. That's hard. I had the opposite, so I got lucky.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Let's have a round of applause for Jeff Bezos.
Thank you for joining us at Internet Association's 2017 Internet Freedom Awards Charity Gala. Proceeds from this event will benefit STEM programming at After School All Stars.